the Zoom room today because it was, I think, distracting, honestly. But we've got a bunch of people on Zoom and we've got our great audience here. So just want to welcome everybody. My name is Sophia Kim. I'm with the Science Learning Institute here at Foothill. And we are here to welcome Dr. Yvonne Cangle. You'll get to hear a lot more about who she is, but I just want to go through a little bit before we get started. First, I'd like to just start with a land acknowledgement. This is our Foothill official land acknowledgement. And if you don't know what a land acknowledgement is, it's a way to acknowledge that the land we live on is not originally our own, that it was actually unceded, meaning it was stolen away from the Native Americans who lived here before us. So I'm just going to read it because it was officially created in partnership with the Ohlone tribe that lives locally. Horseshed Truhi. Foothill College recognizes that it is located on the ethno-historic territory of the ancestral and traditional land of the Huichan Tamien Ohlone-speaking people, and the successors of the historic sovereign Verona Band of Alameda County, presently identified as the Muwekma Ohlone tribe of the San Francisco Bay Area. This land was and continues to be of great importance to the Muwekma Ohlone tribe and other familial descendants of the Verona Band. We recognize that every member of the Greater Foothill College Los Altos Hill community has and continues to benefit from the use and occupation of this land since the institution's founding in 1957. Consistent with our values of community, inclusion, and diversity, we have a responsibility to acknowledge and make known through various enterprises Foothill College's relationship to Native peoples. As members of the Foothill College Los Altos Hills community, it is vitally important that we not only recognize the history of the land on which we live, work, and learn, but also we recognize that the previously federally recognized Muwekma Ohlone tribal people are alive and flourishing members of the Foothill College Los Altos Hills and broader Bay Area community today. Aho. So before we jump in, I want to just do a couple thank yous. We are in a newly inaugurated space. It's called the Multicultural and BIPOC Center, which I might not be getting totally right title-wise. But it's a space that was created just this past year for students to kind of have community. So just thankful for Natalie Hansen and Pauline Brown for hosting us today. They both couldn't be here, but they allowed us to use the space. So just want to acknowledge that. I just also want to thank Carl Welch in the back there, the tall bald guy taking some pictures. He invited Dr. Cagle. He has a relationship, he knows her. And so we're really excited to have her because Carl knows her. I also just want to thank Pacific Dining is providing the pizzas, which are coming later. So for folks who have to leave a little early, if there is pizza, feel free to grab a pizza on your way out, but it's mainly for the lunchtime portion, which should begin around 1 o'clock. And then also want to thank my colleague Chizuka Yamada Hunter over there helping out with the Zoom room. And then also in Zoom, Rosa Nguyen and Lily Swedlow are helping to manage our Zoom. And also a shout out to Deanza. They have a new MESA program just like we do, and they've got a whole viewing room happening on their campus. So hello to all the Deanza people. So this is our first of our STEM Equity Seminar series. This is the third year that we're doing this, and this is a co-sponsored event series that the STEM division does in partnership with the program that I run called the STEM, the Science Learning Institute here. The goal of these talks is to invite folks from all over the country, really, that are in many different STEM fields, sharing about their paths, both academically and in their career, to be an inspiration for all of you all, the Foothill and Deanza students that are here, both in person and on Zoom. So we've been really excited to have these talks going for 3 years. Shizuka over there and I are co-running this year's series. So we'll have a talk this fall. We aim to have another talk in the winter, and then we're aiming to have maybe a panel in the springtime. So please stay in touch with us to hear about those. So I will jump in and I guess I'll read Dr. Cagle's bio first and then share a short TED talk that I thought would be a cool lead-in. So I'm just going to read this because we're going to talk a lot more and you'll get to hear more of the details. But Dr. Yvonne Cangle is an astronaut for the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, otherwise known as NASA, and consulting professor for Stanford University's Department of Cardiovascular Medicine and its Department of Electrical Engineering. So even in that sentence, I heard astronaut, I heard medicine, and I heard electrical engineering. So we're going to get to hear how she got involved in all these amazing disciplines. Dr. Cagle currently is the Chief Scientist for the Level 2 Program Office of NASA's Commercial Reusable Suborbital Research Program. She was assigned as Stanford's lead astronaut science liaison and strategic relationship manager for Google and other Silicon Valley programmatic partnerships. And her groundbreaking work is preserving NASA legacy data while galvanizing NASA's lead in global map mapping, sustainable energies, green initiatives, and disaster preparedness. She got her undergraduate degree locally at San Francisco State University in biochemistry, and then she earned her medical degree at University of Washington. So we'll get to hear a little bit more about that as well. So she's got too many titles to talk about. She's a retired Air Force colonel. She's a professor. She's got an honorary PhD, and she's got lots of awards. So rather than go through all of that, I figured we'll just talk to her about that. So thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Cagle. I thought we would start off with a TED Talk, and just a clip of it. If you, when you get home, you should just look her up and find this TED Talk. It's a longer, maybe 16 minutes. Those of you at home, I believe we're going to broadcast this to you, but just depend on you hearing our sound here. So let me get this to you.
One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
From training to launch at 17,500 miles per hour through the splendid corridors of space, where the first word out of your mouth is, wow. And the second word out of your mouth is, whoa. All the way to inventing a wearable restoration accelerator that has been shown to turn weeks of deconditioning and sprains into days and days of pain into minutes. Oh my goodness, both literally and figuratively, there is just nothing like space on Earth. I tell you, once you launch, you don't even want to look back. But you know what happens when astronauts do when we look back on Earth? Well, it's not just about what we see. It's also about what we don't see. And guess what we don't see? Borders. And guess what we do see? Bridges. We see bridges.
From the beginning. I'm setting out this carpet.
Sorry about that. We've all been there. Oh my God. Even little girls can still wake up in a world where barrier-free bridges exist only in our inner space. For me, growing up in a time when too often capricious eyes erected borders to the macroverse of space, science and engineering were my tools that rebuilt my bridges, and healing became my gateway to the multiverse, inviting me to delve unencumbered into the exciting, thriving human microverse just beneath skin. But still, after 15 years as a doctor, I had yet to really push the envelope of my yearning for space exploration until I responded to the call. I was roused by the call. Hello? Yes, this is your dreams calling. Yeah, well, we haven't given up on you, so don't give up on us. So after 15 years as a senior flight surgeon, I didn't just hang up the phone. Oh no, I dialed it up. By then, I had risen to the rank of colonel in the Air Force, flying in a wide variety of high-performance aircraft, from the F-15 to the F-111, F-18, F-16, anything going to altitude, air-to-air refuelers, helicopters, heavies, medevacs, I wanted to be in it. Yet after a while, those jets didn't seem to go quite fast enough, nor quite high enough. I knew then that the only way to go was up, and the only way at that time was the space shuttle. Oh my goodness. If I could talk about human spaceflight, think about it. In less than 10 minutes, you're 250 miles above the Earth, going 17,500 miles per hour on your way to Mach 25. And as you undo your harness, you're weightless. Who needs main engines? Who needs solid rocket boosters? It's like poetry in motion.
So I saw this. I was doing some research last night because it's been a busy week, and I found this video, and I was just like, oh my gosh, that if you watch that, you know now. I think we could just stop it right here, but we're actually. So I have some questions that I wanted to ask, and we'll definitely have this be more of a chat. And then we wanted to open it up to the audience because I'm sure you all will have questions as well. But I'd love to just start with that TED Talk and just how did that come to you? How did that land on your plate? And then what was that experience like?
Oh, wow. Oh, great. Thank you. It's great to be here, everyone. I can't wait to really engage and hear where your space brain has landed and what giant leaps you have coming from your inner space. I have to say, I've never been upstage before by myself. I pretty much said everything that needs to be said. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'm just like, I was gonna talk, anyway, so
the details.
that was really good. And actually, you know, it was, and I'll talk about it, so real, so raw that even now, after all these years, sitting there and watching it, I'm so glad I had my back to you because I was tearing up and it's still playing in my mind and knowing what I was expressing and where that was coming from. I'm serious. If you see tears starting to accumulate, just, you know, but I love how I've never been like photobombed by a car commercial before. That was classic and the timing was perfect.
Oh no,
so the TED Talk, yeah, that was really great. I was approached and I was asked to kind of give the perspective of space from that inner space. And how do we articulate that? How do you articulate something where there's nothing like space on Earth and do it in 12 minutes? And it was really difficult to do. I didn't want to just sort of give a resume about space and all the math and science and facts that we know, but I wanted to talk about the A in STEAM, about the artistry, about how science and engineering is really the expression of the artistry of the creative called the multiverse. And that lives in all of us. So that means that there's space for all. So when I got the call, the invitation, I felt like I needed to start from the inner space and find a way to tether, to connect all of us together. And it really started with not so much what we see, because there's so much to see and talk about and learn out there, but it's what we don't see and what we don't know. So that TED Talk was probably one of the rare times, if not only time in my career, where they said, you could talk about anything, anyway, just don't bust 12 minutes. I was like, game on. So that was it.
That's great. So maybe we can just cycle back chronologically. I'd love to hear more about your childhood. It said in your bio that you actually grew up or was born in West Point, New York, and then you ended up coming to California. So if you could tell us a little bit about your childhood growing up during the time that you were growing and how that shaped who you are.
Sure. I'm fortunate to be one of your, I should say, I'm fortunate to be one of your homegrown astronauts. So I was born in West Point, New York. However, most of my education happened just north of the Golden Gate Bridge in Marin County. If anyone knows Navato, California. Yeah, there you go. Let's hear it. Yeah. It's a big thriving town, but when I got down there, Main Street was like, you know, a one-horse town. Literally, there was one horse and it owned Main Street. But it's you know, and that was lucky for me. Lucky for you all, your homegrown astronaut is not in the Guinness Book of World Records, but should be, because I and the town of Navato are the only place that both an astronaut and a meteorite has ever landed in the entire universe, a mile from my home. And that was a wake-up call and a lesson to you all that if you don't get to space, space is coming for you. So yeah, I went to Novato High School, go Hornets, and then on to San Francisco State University, where my undergraduate was in biochemistry. I love biology, love chemistry. Figured if I put the two together, it'd be the best of both worlds. And then I was introduced to quant and P-Chem, physical chemistry, and a lot of other things that made my 4 years absolutely horrendous. But I said, that's okay. It's preparing me for medical school. On to the University of Washington School of Medicine, decentralized program in medical education. So I got to train throughout the Washington, Alaska, Montana, Idaho area. So lots of learning, especially remote medicine, which is what I wanted to learn. 1 month in those 4 years, 1 month, count each day, 30 days of biochemistry. 4 years of agony for 1 month. You know, it was like, but you know, fast forward, my invention was really born and evolved based on biochemistry. And if I didn't have that knowledge and education, I wouldn't have been able to ultimately crack the code. So now, probably one of my favorite areas is biochemistry, and I'm trying to hack the universe using those biochemistry, you know, the P-Chem and quant and derivatives and differentials and everything to understand that we're looking for life in the wrong place. And we can have a longer discussion about that because I'm your resident astronaut here, but that I don't think we should be looking entirely just on planetary surfaces, but I think it's at the accretion edge of black holes, where before a black hole goes dormant and entropically takes in all of this energy, there's this absolute accretion fireworks, like the grand finale, a cacophony of energy that's right at the rim of the black hole before it just kind of sucks in and takes in all of that energy of the dying star. And that's where we see so much fusion happening and elements and sodium that's in our bodies and phosphorus that's in our DNA and magnesium and all of these components, carbon that are all coming together. And I think that's where we'll see life. And the reason that we find evidence of it, or we're looking for evidence on it on planets, is because we're all actually stardust. So after we kind of come together there, by whatever greater power you may believe in, we all are disseminated throughout the multiverse as stardust, and we land in towns like Novato, California. Go Hornets.
I have more to go on the poetry part, but could you share, you know, we've got a room full of college, well, not all of them are college students, but just maybe talk a little bit about your college experience and the kind of influences you had. Were there important mentors or experiences you had? We often talk about the importance of internships and that kind of thing. So just if you think back to what your college experience was, sharing how that went for you and how that shaped also your future goals.
Well, I started out with a lot of big ideas and big leaps and was very ambitious. And it wasn't long before I hit my first year of college and practically flunked out. It was very humbling, and it really was, I was at a crossroads where, you know, anthropology was going to take me down. It was just going to be the final, you know, and I had to really decide, did I have what it took? Now, part of that was contributed to the fact that I lived in Navato and commuted to San Francisco. And as a student, I couldn't take the commuter's bus. I couldn't afford it. So I was on the student bus that stopped at every block. So it was 3 hours to get to San Francisco State with a couple of transfers, and then 3 hours to get home every day for 4 years, including all those laboratories that you had to do that started at 8 in the morning and the unknowns that are in, chemistry and everything like that. So that was just exhaustive. And that was really adding to my ambitious sense of what I wanted to do. And so I was at the crossroads and I was like, I don't know if this is sustainable. And I'm like in my first quarter and I'm like, I don't think this is going to happen. And then a voice said, look, you've been struggling to get up, 5 a.m. every morning and you're making it there. That's a win in itself. That tells you that you have something sustainable, some resiliency. So let's just put it to the test. Don't let the environment fail you. Don't let others fail you. If you're going to fail as a result of your own means because you just didn't have what it took. So even though I didn't think I had what it took to pass anthropology or organic chemistry, I felt like I had what it took to hack all the things that I had control over, rest, study, reorganizing, time management, all of those things. And when I really focused on what I could work on, I found that I did have quite a lot of resiliency, and it was enough to push through all of those courses, such that by the end of San Francisco State University, my last quarter, I had 2 jobs, 22 units, and was looking at medical school. The take home is don't let anybody fail you but you. And if you focus on the strengths that you do have and bring that to bear and put your focus and energy on that, not on the hurdles, not on the imposter syndrome, you probably have more than enough to take you all the way from here to Jupiter. So that was my experience.
My ear got caught on imposter syndrome, and I know at least talking to a lot of STEM students that can be real, when you're in a classroom with so many students who seem to understand everything and you don't. Can you talk a little bit about how you've seen that show up in your life and what you've done to kind of battle that or confront it?
Yeah. Imposter syndrome is a tough one. When you already are not the typical student for any number of reasons. Now, this years ago, so there weren't many women, there weren't many women of color, there were, I was, younger then, and there were all these things that were just, economically, and I'm commuting and all these things, and I'm just thinking, gosh, the deck is stacked against me. There's just no way. And I really felt like I didn't have what it took. The imposter syndrome was so loud, and there were so many stumbling stones on top of the fact that you're trying to decide, do I even, make the grade? And finally, I realized that, again, it's sort of turning things around, not letting somebody else fail you. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to let all these stumbling stones fail me, but there's no way I can scale them because I could just keep counting. And I thought the only way I can hack this, we didn't have the word hack, bear with me, was to turn those stumbling stones into stepping stones. And suddenly I had traction, I had footage, I had momentum, I was launching. And that was just a different way of looking at it. I could never clear all of these disadvantages that I was up against, these stumbling stones. So I needed to find ways where those things gave me resiliency and strength, and to lead with that, and to know that that was going to be strong enough to get me where I needed to go. And the other thing I did with the imposter is a really loud voice, and it's hard to get that voice out of your head when it has a whole choir outside of your head. And so again, figured out how to hack that. And what I said was, if you can't get rid of the imposter, might as well just invite the imposter to the table. So in my head, I set a seat, set some teacups up, we had a conversation, everything like that. And I said, you know what? You might have some really good points about me, but right now I'm a little busy. Get in line behind all the other voices that are out there in the world. And when I can get around to you, we'll discuss what you have to say. And when I pushed it all the way behind all the other voices, the first voice at the front of the line was my own, the voice of my head. And I realized that's just one voice. I can handle that. And once I just worked on that voice, everything else was just in the noise. And I've been a little too busy, as you see, all these years to get back to that elephant at the table, the imposter, still out there, but just way, way back in the distance, somewhere in the vacuum of space.
Yeah, so I'd love to hear about your journey. I mean, it sounds like you went to medical school and then somehow made the pivot to the Air Force. So could you just talk a little bit about what this whole journey has led you to? And there's a lot there, so if you want to break it up into parts, however it makes sense.
Oh, great. Well, if I hadn't upstaged myself, I'd have some really exciting things to share, but yeah, so biochemistry, knew I wanted to go on to medical school. But you can imagine if I'm commuting on a bus, 6 hours a day, I probably didn't have a lot of money. So I signed on to the Air Force to, have the Air Force take care of me. And as I was talking to the recruiter, and you have to understand, my father was retired Air Force. He was a master sergeant, X-ray technician, worked in the hospital. My mother worked in flight records, although she was a civilian, she kept the hours for all of the pilots and all the different aircraft. And she had such precision that she could tell just by the engine, the sound of the engine flying over our home at Hamilton Air Force Base, exactly what, if that was a trainer, a heavy, a fighter, everything. And that was the only reason we could leave the table. We'd always run out and look, and she was always right. I wanted that precision. And then with my dad, in X-ray, I think I was about 12 years old and I fell down and I was convinced I had shattered every bone in my body. It was probably just a hangnail, but I'm going to my dad and all. And I said, I need an X-ray. You don't understand. This is just, and so he took me in and he took an X-ray that he knew he didn't have to. And of course, nothing was broken, but suddenly I saw my inner space for the first time. It was like, that was me. Those are my bones. That was and at that point, I knew I wanted to learn more about all the explorations, about that fantastic voyage of the inner space. And that became the bridge to outer space, because I realized that the things that are happening in our bodies are expressed outside of us. And the only thing that separates us is a little bit of skin and bone and muscle and things. But the universe and the physics and the science are very complementary. It's just a matter of scale. So I knew that was the trajectory that I wanted. And the Air Force recruiter was like, well, with all that your love of flying and precision and your dad in hospital and everything like that, why don't you go into something called flight medicine, which means that you get to be the doctor for the air crew, the pilots. And in order to understand their environment, you have to fly in their high performance jets or helicopters and air-to-air refuelers. You've never done an air-to-air refueler. It's where you've got like basically the gas station. It's another airplane, a heavy. And then you're in like a fighter jet and you approach and you come up and it drops a probe and there's the gas tank hose that for whatever reason is like right over the head of the passenger. So you see this thing coming right at you and you talk about precision, and these folks are good. Now it's flying, you're flying, there's wind, there's weather, there's turbulence, and it's got a very narrow, opening that it's got a nail. And that is just, you have not lived until you practically died. It's just awesome. So you get to fly on all of these different kinds of performance jets. And I went on an Air Force scholarship. So they paid for all of my medical school and they paid for my books, my microscope, everything. It was like awesome. I didn't have to work. And they even gave me a stipend every month. They gave me $250 a month to live on. I tell you, you haven't lived till you've had peanut butter sandwiches without the jelly. And so I owed them a year for a year, 4 years back. But as a flight surgeon, you can imagine it was so much fun paying back that time that after 15 years, I suddenly realized I forgot I actually meant to go to space. I literally forgot. I woke up one morning, I was like, how do you face yourself in the mirror? How do you tell people that you forgot that you meant to be an astronaut? You forgot for 15 years. You're having so much fun. So I signed on to the astronaut program. So of course I paid back my time, and the astronaut program took me in. And I stayed for 22 years as a flight surgeon and then retired from the Air Force. And I'm still an astronaut active, but retired as a colonel. So that's how much fun that you have. And all of that was just preparation to take it off planet.
Wow.
So that was kind of my trajectory.
That makes more sense now. I was wondering how the medicine and the Air Force connected, but the way to pay for your med school and all of that. So I'm sure a lot of people have this question, how do you become an astronaut? What was that whole process?
Wow, excellent. Well, I had to find it out the same way, and I didn't have Google then, right? So what I did have was something called 411. I think that was, yeah, right, information. Yeah, all right.
On the
Thanks,
phone,
Scotty.
like a
That's just-
dial phone.
Yeah, and and thank you very much, on the dial phone, yeah. Just so you know, there was no way we had pocket dials back, you couldn't fit it in your pocket, so this was, an advantage, but. So what happened was, and the way that I remember that I wanted to be an astronaut was I was a flight surgeon, I was seeing patients in my clinic, pilots in the air crew and everything like that. And one morning I woke up and I had a cold and a fever, and I called it in, and well, they said, well, you have to stay home, you can't come into clinic. I love medicine. I love it so much. And I just felt like that wasn't right. I was a doctor, I could take care of myself. And I said, well, I could still see patients, I know how to start my own IVs on myself, because I was the IV queen, right? And I said, I can just start the IV, stay hydrated, I can see patients, I'll be fine. And they're like, Dr.Cagle, you are not going to be coming in, sitting down with an IV in your arm while you're seeing patients. And then I had the visual and I thought, okay, well, I still wasn't happy. So I said, fine, if I can't go into clinic, what if I couldn't be a doctor? What would I want to be? There's got to be something else. Fine, if I can't be a doctor today, I'll be, what else was that? And I'm thinking, and that's when I went, I meant to be an astronaut. If I hadn't had a cold, I probably would still be trying to see patients with an IV today. So, so I thought it was too late. And I was stationed in England, and England had 4 channels, the BBC. And I'm upstairs vacuuming because I can't be in clinic with an IV. And I turn the vacuum off to bring it down the stairs, and all of a sudden I see on one of the channels, I don't see it because I'm still upstairs, I hear it, Black doctor from California selected to be an astronaut. And I'm like, wait a minute.
That wasn't you, was it?
That's what I thought. I'm like, because I was up for a reassignment, I was waiting for my orders, and I'm going, I'm a Black woman doctor, I'm a woman, I'm Black, I'm a doctor, and I'm from California. What are the odds, really? When you do the math, there's only 6 of us, right? What are the odds? And I go running downstairs to see me, and what do I see? Dr. Mae Jemison. And I'm like, that is just not right. It is so on now. Dropped the vacuum, hopped on my daughter's bike, and I went racing to the post office to see if maybe my orders were, hey, you're going to NASA. It wasn't, but that's all that it took. And suddenly I couldn't unsee that. And I called up 411 and I said, because remember, I can't go to work. What are you going to do? So floorboards, no. I called up 411 and I said, hi, how do I become an astronaut? And she's like, well, I can give you the number to NASA. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's great. Here's the number to NASA. But her voice, I think she quit that day. She's like, I'm not taking any more of these calls. Got the application, filled it out practically in crayon, ran to the post office again, turned it in, and then had to wait. The whole process takes about 9 months. So you fill out the application, and then they look at they go through the different requirements that they have. So they select people based on what the missions are that they're projecting out in the decadal 10-year plan. And then they call it the Golden 100. There's 100 people they call to the Johnson Space Center and to do the interview. And out of that 100, they take 20 to 40. Now, the people that they're looking for in terms of the requirements that you need to have at least a master's in math, science, engineering, or education, computer science, robotics. All of these things count. If you're a pilot, you just need a bachelor's degree, but then you need a certain number of flying hours. And if you're and if you want to be a commander, you need to go through test pilot school. So once you have that master's degree, the other requirement is that you need a minimum of 3 years in an aerospace environment. So internships or apprenticeship of some sort. Any aerospace industry is fine. They prefer NASA because there's nothing like space on Earth. So the more familiarization you have with NASA's mission and flying missions and things like that. But you can take any of those areas of STEAM and use that for your internship. That internship starts when you're in high school. You can start counting that towards your 3 years. So from high school all the way through college, there are internships. If you go to intern.nasa.gov, used to be one-stop shop, but now it's even easier, intern.nasa.gov. And you go into a big database and you put in your interests in your area. Don't worry what qualifications you do or don't have, just go ahead and put it in. And then they match you throughout the 10 NASA centers based on what area of interest where there's a match. And you can do internships throughout your career. But it starts in high school because in high school, you can start flying in the Vomit Comet, the zero gravity KC-135 aircraft that thinks it's a roller coaster, does parabolas 30 in one direction. And then if you're still, not everything that goes up comes back down. If you're still in good shape, and even if you're not, you're on for the ride, it turns around, you do 30 in the other direction. Every time it dives for 26 seconds, you're completely weightless. And you can really practice a lot of how the body moves and science and procedures and equipment and everything during those flights. But those hours count, and any research that you're doing, call it high school, college, summer programs, internship, all of that counts towards the 3 years. And then you can submit your application. And then after about 9 months, they weed through used to be 4,000 applications. Now it's 18,000. Don't worry, still apply. Even if you're in community college, put it in, because they will watch and track and watch how you grow. And that gets weighted towards your interview. You do your interview for a week. You walk around Johnson Space Center. They check everything from head to toe. They give you strength and conditioning. They measure your anthropometrics to see how you fit in things like the Soyuz and helmets and spacesuits. And you carry a little blue bag around that has your 24-hour urine container that's sewn in your hip. Don't lose it, because then you have to start all over again. And then they do a personal interview. It's you and 14 of NASA's favorite friends and scientists, engineers, and community people surrounding you, asking you why you want to be an astronaut and, about your career through the application that you put in. It's the most fascinating time. You'll learn so much. It's so exciting. And then they end up selecting 20 to 40 based on what missions they're flying. And as I said, even though there's a lot of people applying, if you find something that you're really passionate about and you have some unique skills that you've hacked, honed, makerspaces, whatever, and you've learned the NASA family and mission to know where there are gaps that you have some ideas and solutions for, it could be 80,000 people applying. You're going to get NASA's attention. And the other thing is, one of the questions they always ask is, have you ever met an astronaut? Please, 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 say yes. You can check that box right there. The other qualifications are, they like you to have international experience. So if you've done Peace Corps, military, you come from an international country, or you've done some education over there, or you're fluent in a language, or even if you're not, all of these things help because we're an international community. And they look at your community experience. Has it been diverse? Has it been inclusive? Has it been diversified in the sense that you haven't pigeonholed yourself in one area, but you're a lifelong learner? All of these things count towards that application. And then if you get the phone call and they ask you, what would you want to do more than go to space? Don't say have a strawberry sundae like I did.
Is that what happened to you?
Yes, it was. I was in the emergency room. People were having heart attacks, everything like that. I thought it was a crank call. I needed to get back to my patients. And finally, the nurse came and we had stabilized everybody. And she dragged me into the broom closet. And she, had dragged the phone. We had long cords back then. And she said, would you take this call? Just take it. It's not a crank. And it was, actually them letting me know. And then I couldn't tell anybody for 3 days because they hadn't announced it. So you can't even tell your mom. And then when you do tell your mom is upset because you knew for 3 days. So that's a little bit about how it works. And I can tell you more because I'll be here around campus and I can actually work with you on internships, apprenticeships. You can work with me on different projects that I'm working on, and all of these can be very instrumental in moving you forward in your own giant leap.
Wow, that was amazing. We're running short on time, so I wanted to ask you about your research, but rather I'd like to have students be able to ask, especially those who have to leave early and those. So what we're going to do is transition to Q&A time. People on Zoom too, Lily and Rosa, whoever's there, if you want to come off mute. But if people who can't, we can prioritize people who have to leave for like a 12:50 or 1 o'clock class, because then we'll be here around 1 till 1:30, 1:45-ish with pizza if people can stay. So is that okay?
Yeah, let me
Okay.
just, and if you can't stay or we run out of time, I'm here every Thursday from 2 to 4, open office hours. What's the office number? Across from the STEM club.
Yes, like 4130.
Yeah, just across from the STEM club.
42.
Open door, just come in. Yes.
Oh, okay. So go to the STEM, if you want to come by, you're like, I'm here to see the NASA astronaut. Go to the STEM division office. Would that be okay, Zach?
Yes.
And then they'll direct you to where the room is.
Yeah, and I'll be there today too.
Yeah, great. So, if you have to leave for a class, but have a question either on Zoom or in person, please raise your hand. We can start with that. Anybody have any questions? And I always have more questions, but.
There's a Zoom question.
Okay.
So Hamza is asking you to clarify and talk about finding those internships.
There while you learn all about NASA itself. And it's at all of the centers. The internships, I talked about the match as well. And also I'm looking for students who want to get into anything from data science to physiology, fitness conditioning, astronomy, additive manufacturing. We've got the KCI Krause Center here. We also have Emerging Technology Institute, ETI. We've got the STEM Club. So I'm really here to be able to work with you all and create that gateway in the pipeline for us to help you align and find a fit for various internships in your areas of interest or learning. So don't be shy. Please approach me.
Questions? Yeah. Do you mind
You're-
just speaking, because then they can hear you on Zoom?
When you were in the, like the astronaut training program, what did you do better than others that basically made them pick you over the ones who didn't make it of the 20 to 40?
Wow.
Oh, do you know the answer?
I floated better than anybody. Actually, it was just the opposite. First time I did a KC flight, they call over the top because you're about to dive down and everyone's supposed to float. And, couldn't sleep the night before. Nobody does because you haven't floated since you were in the womb, right? So they did the up and over, and just before we crested, suddenly that's how my mind works. Like just 4 seconds before I went, oh no, what if everybody else starts to float and I don't? Oh my gosh. And so that wasn't enough time. So in that time I had to think of Hackett, always thinking. So we go up and over, and sure enough, everyone's floating around me. I'm watching, like, figured it, everything like that. And all of a sudden I realized it's like the roundabout in England, nobody knows you're lost because they're all getting off and they don't notice that you're going around. I'm like, if I start jumping at just the right time, it'll be like a strobe effect, right? So I went to get ready to get out of my chair and realized I still had my seatbelt on. And I took it off. So then guess what? I floated too. For me, I think the big thing was, since I had forgotten for 15 years that I wanted to be an astronaut, you don't really forget, but you're doing a lot of other fun things. I had a lot of experience in remote medicine and being able to do a lot with triaging, meaning identifying where your emergencies are and who to take care of first and how to stabilize patients and medevac them and everything. So the first telemedicine was actually space. And I had already been doing that remote training since University of Washington in Seattle, the WWAMI program, the decentralized program. And now here was an opportunity to take that, not just at acceleration, but at altitude there. And they knew that they were going towards human space flight. And now here we are going back to the moon, 2025, boots on the ground. That's when they start sending us docs. And then 2035, on to Mars, which for me, I want to be a one-way trip because I want to see how the human evolves. Again, 2 to 4 Thursdays, I can talk about that. We are the aliens we go in search of. We don't only become 2 inches taller, and our heart doesn't only just shift to the center of our chest and our appendix slip behind our back, so that if the pilot is doing the appendectomy, just to remind him that that you should be going towards, because he's just going to hunt around, and your DNA changes. So if you're a twin now, you won't be at 8 minutes and 31 seconds because your base pairs start to shift. So that's just adaptation. Let's talk how we evolve. And I think we're going to evolve into capacities that we haven't even. We're driven by the environment around us. So that's why we need to take care of our planet, because we need a sustainable environment in order to not just survive, but to thrive.
Wow. I could just sit here listening to you all day. Other questions from students or anybody in the audience or on Zoom?
We have a question on
Let's
Zoom.
do Fatima and then Isaac.
I was wondering, do you have more experience with the research base into a lab? And so can you tell me how do you feel, where do you find experience and how it helped you in your journey?
And I heard research experience into,
In the lab.
in the lab. I spent a lot of time in the lab. When I went to University of Washington, I had a choice between University of Washington and Harvard, and I chose University of Washington for the decentralized program, all the right reason, all the good things. They're both great schools, medical school. But one of the reasons was that University of Washington didn't require that you do research in order to get your medical degree. Okay, cool. In my last year, they changed that and we had to do it. I'm just like, oh, and I protested. They're like, can't you grandfather? And they were like, no. So I did research and I did it on the kidney renal. It was really fascinating. I loved it. The biochemistry of the kidney. But then once I got the degree, I was like, okay, I'm done with that. Fast forward 15 years later, I realized that I didn't want to come back from Mars and that a simple sprain could really challenge my resiliency and sustainability. Because if you sprain your soft tissue, you don't even have to break a bone. You don't have 6 weeks. You only have 6 days before that limb may not be able to be reconditioned. You don't use your legs a lot when you're floating around, and there's not a lot of gravity. So it's really, space is an upper body world. So those who have a paraplegia may actually be better astronauts because they already know how to navigate in an upper body world. So if you aren't using your legs a lot and you, like, say, sprain your arm, then you're one limb away from not having to be able, and you need your limbs because inertia to move yourself. So I figured the greatest risk was not the solar flare coming at me, but was that I tripped. And so I had been working on an invention since I was a Girl Scout that I started to really work on for Mars, because it was a way to accelerate healing soft tissue injuries, strains and sprains and things like that. When I was a Girl Scout, someone sprained their ankle on the first girls camping trip, and we all had to go home. So I wanted to figure out how to fix the sprain. Was able to work on it at the University of Washington and with the Air Force, just in turn on my own time and everything like that. And since I didn't have money and I wasn't an engineer and not very smart, it took me 30 years to figure out how to design something that's wearable, the size of an ace wrap, that has no motor, no electricals, doesn't require any software, uses the engine of the human body and materials, and is able to change 10 weeks of physical therapy into not 10 days, but 10 minutes, where you can be weight bearing again, and within 10 days, be back to where you were, if not beyond. I'll be working on that in and around, so people want to know more. But that all I took to the laboratory and have learned so much about science, engineering, bioengineering, and now I want to learn about how to turn all that into a math model. So everything that I've ever learned is coming into play. And I'm really glad that I've had this privilege to have this kind of a journey. There's lots of space science labs. Berkeley is starting a campus at Ames, which is just down the road, on 32 acres of Ames. And we're also going to have an HBCU West. And all of these are going to have laboratories and internship and apprentice opportunities in all of space science, space economics, space law, everything. So you all position, you're in a better position than that meteorite was. And this is where you need to be. And I am who you need to be talking to. So, yeah.
Great. Isaac, do you have a question?
Yeah.
So you mentioned projects, and that really piqued my interest. So what projects are you working on right now?
Great. Wow. Well, the big push right now, of course, is AI and data. And the reason I'm spending a lot of time on that is because it is like the connector. Everything, there's some aspect that can be amplified and accelerated from my own research to other things that are going to space and things that are already here on Earth, obviously. But also, space is now a laboratory for Earth, where the things that we learn, we can bring back here. So we're doing everything from biotech. We're flying CubeSats, we're doing biosentinel, where we're growing stem cells in space, because although they don't differentiate very well, one of the failures of space, love failure, is the best thing, it's the best teacher out there. The stem cells didn't differentiate it, but they started growing like crazy, like, out of control. And we were like, oh, this is just really, and then one of the corporations or one of the industries here said, you can grow stem cell in bulk, so grow them and bring them back here and we'll differentiate. So we're doing that. We also have a stem cell biobank, where we're looking not just at genetics, but the human genome, but epigenetics. We're flying tardigrades, so those are space bears, and they're pretty hardy. They're resilient. You can throw them out there in space on the back porch, and they can freeze, get hit with radiation, dehydrate them, put them at speeds, everything. And they come back and warm them up, and they're back to playing and all cute and cuddly again and procreating. And then we're doing additive manufacturing. I was one of the original people that helped put the first 3D printer in space. And you can imagine what that was like, trying to, PLA trying to get it injected and other things while everything floats in space, nothing flows. And now we're doing, special space 3D printers and additive manufacturing, designed just for space, as well as coming up with new materials, smart materials, graphene and of course titanium and other things that are lightweight but resilient and thermodynamically stable and radiation hardened. We've got the supercomputers at Ames. So a lot of our data processing and analysis and storage, we're looking at ways that we can do that more efficiently. Aeronautics at Ames, so flight surfaces, FAA, runway deconflicting, how things move across runways. We've got drones now, so how do you make space for those on the ground, as well as deconflict space for all the swarm satellites, drones, and the space helicopter that are up there with all the other commercial space. Yeah, who does that? Who even thinks about putting a helicopter in space? The Blue Origin, SpaceX, the Axioms, and all the different space companies that are launching cargo and humans into space now. We're getting ready to build the new International Space Station, the next one. We're supposed to swap it out in 2030. We could use a little help with that. And here I have to give this shout out. Remember, Ames, we're in your backyard. I just had a meeting with the center director, and he gave me my latest marching orders. He wants to delve into the community college community, all right? All of you students right here. And he's trying to compete with those of you who want to go on and get 4 years degree. All right. So you may already have loans. You already may have debt. You want to incur more by going on and getting your master's and becoming an astronaut and everything like that. No, all that's really great. I'm encouraging you to do that. But for those of you who need a break, or who want to get some applied experience or apprenticeship or internships to go on and do advanced degrees or work at NASA or become an astronaut. For those of you who want to start paying off their debt and they need to make money because they want to go on to other institutions, or they just want to make money. For those of you who just want a job, we have openings right now coming out of community college. You have demonstrated the foundational knowledge, experience, and discipline to already come into our technician apprenticeship programs and become those folks who are running the equipment in our wind tunnels, in our arc jets, with our supercomputers, in our CubeSats, in any of our facilities and equipment and everything like that. And you come out with that kind of experience, not only are you already making competitive salaries, but you've got what you need to take that to the other universities you might decide to go to at any time in life, as well as take it off planet into space. That's what I call training. So 411 looks a whole lot different right now, and 411 starts with Foothill College.
We had one last question in the chat. Maybe
Yep.
you can make it quick, and then we'll wrap up the speaking portion and then just have lunch and mingling time. One of the groups asked, are there internship opportunities where students can do rotations and explore different disciplines?
Yes, there's something, one of the other projects I'm working on is called, I call it bench space. Bench space. Okay, anyway. So one of the initiatives, again, I'm working on with the center director is to have students from high school through, students of all ages, to have bench time, so exactly what the question was, rotation time with our scientists and engineers, where you're right on the bench with them, sitting with them, learning, seeing, being exposed to. So yes, there's absolutely opportunity, and if there's interest, again, I'm kind of your meteorite. I'm the gateway to that.
Great. So we'll wrap up the speaking portion. Can everybody just help give Dr. Cagle?
And one last shout out to VRAR. We're working with BG now to bring space down to Earth to folks who are very remote, very indigenous, didn't even know that we've been on the moon in some cases. And we're trying to bring that virtual experience so that they can be immersed in that. So anyone who has interest in that and wants to help with those modules and with those relationships, and even maybe to help set it up on VG proper. Again, you know, you've got you've got ETI, you've got everyone from Zach to Carl to Constantine. Where's Constantine? Yep, exactly. There you go. Shout out again to ETI. And again, I'm across from the STEM club. There's so much out there. I can't even begin to tell you it all. The only take home is that failure is your best teacher. It's the other side of success, and that there's space for all. So stick with it and push that elephant in the pink tutu all the way to the back of the line and have yourself a cup of tea.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh, no. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
This is gonna make me cry. These are the things we're gonna miss when you're floating in space. So we're doing plant the moon, plant Mars. So we need our plant people to come help us pick the most sustainable plants and the most beautiful redolent. Please, thank you. It's
Thank
part
you
of
so much.
surviving and thriving.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's put down, but
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
if people want to stay here, we can maybe make a circle of chairs and have pizza and chat with Dr. Cagle. Please, you're welcome to stay and ask questions and hang out. Thanks, everybody at home. Bye-bye.